Good morning. Good morning, everyone. A foot joined. Well, hello, foot. Hello, hello. Hello to everyone, including the foot. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, dear book club. Good morning to you. We need some milk. Oh, that's okay. We had a mediumly okay rest, Amanda. Just medium. But, you know, it's okay. We'll survive, right? Good morning. How's everyone doing? Hey. Is everyone sleeping well? Everyone got good rest last night? I'm trying to open this up. There we go. Okay. I got it. When is the next time? There might be one tonight, but I'm not making any promises because it will be totally dependent on how the day goes with the babies for tonight. Yes. Oh, it's rainy for you? It is not rainy here, but it was windy this past weekend. Like, it looked like it was gonna be gloomy, but it's pretty sunny today, I have to say. So, you know. Yeah. I'm liking this pistachio. Oh, you're totally welcome, Miss Bella. I'm liking this pistachio coffee. I'm not gonna lie, you guys. It's pretty good. It's a pretty exciting addition to the run of coffee stuff. Of course, it is a smaller one, so I have to add a shot to it to get a full coffee. But that doesn't mean it's not delicious. Hey, Avery. I'm gonna roll for some of this one. Yeah, I might slip in an unscheduled one. For any like last people who are on the tier who missed it, but I'm not sure. But I will make the new schedule soon. The only reason I haven't made the June schedule yet is because I'm still deciding if I'm gonna sign up for that baby wearing course, and if I do, it happens on Tuesdays, so we wouldn't be able to do roll for slime on Tuesdays anymore, so it would be like Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, which is fine. It's not a big deal, right? But that is why, in case anyone was wondering why I haven't put the schedule up yet. There's one more item I need to be able to take the course, and I haven't been able to find one that I like, and they're not cheap, so I don't want to buy one that I don't love, since they're not cheap. So I'm like looking on resale sites right now, trying to see if I can find one that's either cheap and I don't care what it looks like, or is pretty and the same cost. The Wednesday, Thursday, Friday schedule. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing, right? It'd be fine. We'd make it work. The reason I can't do Mondays is because Secret Husband has later meetings on Mondays, so he can't take her. But, you know, we'll figure it out one way or another. I think the class is also sometimes on Mondays, but, like, obviously I'll just take her to class because it's baby wearing. I don't want to be the boss, but we'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do, am I right? Who let me be the boss? That was a poor choice on someone's part. Someone was like, put her in charge? Sure. And I was like, why? Why would you do that? You don't want me in charge. I'm a dummy dumb. I don't want to be in charge either. Becca, seriously, girl. Why? Don't put me in charge. I'm not meant to be in charge. She's not here to defend herself. I know, she's probably with a sick tiny human. Oh, wait, I think one of her kids has a, what do you call it today? There's a word. where they go out of school and they do a thing. Field trip. That's what I was looking for. Field trip. They have a field trip today. Yeah. Good morning, Samantha. I love you, Samantha, and my love will never die. Remember, Samantha. They're harmony. That's hilarious. I love that, Christina. Hi, Cindy. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. It's not Jamantha, it's Samantha, but we can do both, right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cindy. Happy birthday to you. Oh, I'm glad you caught up, Priscilla. You have the most, oh, thank you, Cindy. I actually hate the birthday song. I only sing it for people that I really like. Because, well, I'm gonna explain it. The thing about the birthday song is that no one ever sings it on key, right? So you'll be anywhere. Oh, right. Sorry. Thank you. The truth is, she doesn't really even look like that anymore, you guys. I know her face is on here, and I know people were worried about her face being on here, but she doesn't really look like that. It's actually funny. I don't think she even looked like that when the photo was taken. I think that this photo is confusing. I don't think she actually looks like this. But what I was gonna say was, I don't think the birthday song is ever sung on key. You might be somewhere. Did it get distorted? Yeah, I think it kind of did. Like, it doesn't really look like her. Like, you can't look at this and know what my baby looks like, right? Like, you don't know. So anyway, people start singing, yeah, like Christina said, and it's never, but even when this was taken, Sloth, even the week that this photo was taken, I don't feel like this photo looks like her, or it didn't look like what she looked like at the time. There are other photos in the set that did look like her. This one, I never felt looked like her. That's why I'm like, whatever. If I thought it looked like her, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to show it, but this one doesn't. But I use it because it's Jasmine, get it? Because we call her Jasmine. So anyway, people just sing the song, and like, they can't handle the tempo, the key, the whatever, so it never turns out okay unless you have like professionals who go like, and they all start on the same key. You know what I mean? Yeah, she doesn't look like this in any of the other photos from this set. The rest of the photos from the set, she looks like herself. This one photo doesn't look like her. So that's why I was like, meh, don't care. Like, there's a picture right here next to where I'm standing of her in her little Jedi costume. That looks like her, for reals. So that's why we didn't show that one. Yeah, Happy Birthday is a struggle bus song, but I wanted to make Cindy feel special because I love her. So I sang it for her anyway. Oh, I'm sorry you had a bad day, but this is gonna be a great book club because we're reading a great book. Yes, safe mug for lives, then exactly. I think that's part of why Secret Husband did that. Also because it's the Jasmine one. Okay, so I don't really have a bookmark, so we're gonna make a fake bookmark again out of this card that I was using before. Great book, what a great, oh, thank you. So we read, I think we read 2 chapters yesterday, right? Pretty sure. Let's check. I love this book already. I tagged in a person singing the Mockingjay song. Oh yeah, was it good? I actually really like the Mockingjay song. Oh no, we only read 1 chapter yesterday. We read 1 chapter. Okay. I think. Yeah. We read 1 chapter yesterday because it was a long one. So we'll read chapter 2 today. Okay, you sent it to a bunch of people. Oh, very nice. Yes, and then we had the meeting yesterday, but it was also like pretty much right on time. It was just a long chapter. I missed yesterday and I haven't cut up, so I'm gonna be like, okay, we'll see you later, Cindy. It's really good though, Cindy, just so you know. I didn't remember the first chapter because it's been since 2020 since I read it, and it it's almost even better now, you know. So don't don't sleep on that one. But have a very happy. Oh, you haven't read it yet. Oh, even better. Oh my gosh, you're gonna love it. Anyway, have a very happy birthday. If you do anything fun, please let us know, and we will see you later. All right, chapter 2, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Ahem. The District 12 girl. Could there be a bigger slap in the face? District 12, the smallest district, the joke district, with his stunted, joint-swollen kids that always died in the first 5 minutes, and not only that, but the girl? Not that the girl couldn't win, but in his mind, the Hunger Games were largely about brute force, and the girls were naturally smaller than the boys, and therefore at a disadvantage. Coriolanus had never been particularly a favorite of Dean Highbottom, who he jokingly called high as a kite bottom among his friends, but he had not expected such a public humiliation. Had the nickname gotten back to him, or was this just an acknowledgement that in the New World Order, the Snows were fading into insignificance? He could feel the blood burning in his cheeks as he tried to remain composed. Most of the other students had risen and were chatting amongst themselves. He must join them. He must pretend that this was of no consequence, but he seemed incapable of movement. The most he could manage was to turn his head to the right, where Sejanus still sat beside him. Coriolanus opened his mouth to congratulate him, but he stopped, barely concealed misery on the other boy's face. "What is it?" he asked. "Aren't you happy? District 2, boy, that's like pick of the litter." "You forget I'm part of that litter," said Sejanus hoarsely. Coriolanus let that sink in. So 10 years in the capital and all this privileged life it had provided was wasted on Sejanus. He still thought of himself as a district citizen. Sentimental nonsense. Sejanus's forehead creased in consternation. "I'm sure my father requested it. He's always trying to get my mind right." No doubt, thought Coriolanus. Old Strabo Plinth's deep pockets and influence were respected, even if his lineage was not. And while the mentorships were supposedly based on merit, strings clearly had been pulled. The audience had settled into seats now at the back of the dais. Curtains parted to reveal the floor-to-ceiling screen, recapping aired live from each district, moving from the East Coast to the West, and was broadcast around the country. That meant District 12 would kick off the day. Everyone rose as the seal of Panem filled the screen, accompanied by the capital's anthem. "Gen of Panem, mighty city, through the ages you shine anew." Some of the students fumbled for words, but Coriolanus, who had heard his grandmother butcher it daily for years, sang all 3 verses in a forceful voice, garnering a few nods of approval. It was pathetic, but he needed every drop of approval that he could get. The seal dissolved to show President Ravenstill, his hair streaked with silver, dressed in pre-war military uniform, as a reminder that he had been controlling the districts long before the dark days of the rebellion. He recited a brief passage from the Treaty of Treason, which laid out the Hunger Games as a war reparation. Young district lives were taken for the young capital lives that had been lost. The price of the rebels' treachery. The game makers cut to the bleak square of District 12, where a temporary stage was now lined with peacekeepers and had been erected before the Justice Building. Mayor Lip, a squat, freckled man in a hopelessly outdated suit, stood between 2 burlap sacks. He dug his hand deeply into the bag on his left, pulled out a slip of paper, and barely glanced at it. The District 12 girl is the tribute, Lucy Graybeard," he said into a mic, and the camera swept over a crowd of gray, hungry faces in gray, shapeless clothing seeking the tribute. It zoomed in towards a disturbance, girls drawing back from the unfortunate chosen one. The audience gave a surprised murmur at the sight of her. Lucy Graybeard stood upright in a dress made of rainbow ruffles, now raggedy but once fancy. Her dark, curly hair was pulled up and woven with limp wildflowers. Her colorful ensemble drew the eye as to tattered butterflies in a field of moths. She did not make straight for the stage, but began to weave through the girls off to her right.
It happened quickly, the dip of her hand into the ruffles at her hip, the wriggle of the bright green transported from her pocket and deposited down the collar of a smirking redhead's blouse, the rustle of her skirt as she moved on. Focus stayed on the victim, her smirk changing to an expression of horror, her shrieks as she fell to the ground, pawing at her clothes, and the shout of the mayor. And in the background, her assailant was still weaving, still gliding her way to the stage, not looking back even once. Heavensby Hall came to life as people elbowed their neighbors. Did you see that? What did she drop down her dress? Was that a lizard? I saw a snake. Did she kill her? Coriolanus scanned the crowd and felt a spark of hope. His long shot of a tribute, his throwaway, his insult had captured the capital's attention. That was good, right? With his help, perhaps she could keep it, and he could turn disgrace into a respectable showing. One way or another, their fates were irrevocably linked. Up on the screen, Mayor Lip flew down the steps of the stage, pushing his way through the assembled girls to reach the fallen one on the ground. Mayfair, Mayfair, he cried. My daughter needs help. A circle had opened up around her, but the few half-hearted attempts to help her were blocked by her thrashing limbs. The mayor broke into the clearing just as a small iridescent green snake shot out of the folds of her dress and into the crowd, bringing screams and scrambles to avoid it. The departure of the snake calmed Mayfair, but her distress was immediately replaced by embarrassment. She looked straight into the camera as she realized that all the citizens of Panem were watching. One hand tried to straighten the bow that had gone askew in her hair, and the other moved to her garments, filthy with the coal dust that coated everything, torn from her clawing. As her father helped her back to her feet, it was apparent that she had wet herself. He removed his jacket to wrap it around her and handed her over to a peacekeeper to lead her away. He turned his back to the stage, trained a murderous look on the District 12's newest tribute, and as Coriolanus watched Lucy Greybeard take the stage, he felt a stab of uneasiness. Could she be mentally unstable? There was something vaguely familiar but honestly disturbing about her. The rows of raspberry pink, royal blue, and yellow daffodil ruffles. She's like a circus performer, one of the girls remarked. The other mentors made sounds of agreement. That was it. Coriolanus reached back into his memory to the circuses of his early childhood, the jugglers and acrobats, the clowns and dancing girls in puffy dresses, twirling around while his brain grew giddy with spun sugar. His tributes choosing such festive attire for the darkest event of the year showed a strangeness beyond a simple lapse in judgment. The allotted time for District 12's reaping had no doubt come and gone, but still they lacked a male tribute, and even so, when Mayor Lip retook the stage, he ignored the bag of names and made a beeline for the girl tribute and struck her in the face so powerfully that she was knocked to her knees. He had raised his hand to hit her again when a couple of the peacekeepers intervened, grabbing his arms and attempting to redirect him to the business at hand. When he resisted, they hauled him back into the Justice Building, bringing the whole proceeding to a standstill. Attention shifted to the girl on stage, and as the camera zoomed in on her, Coriolanus was not reassured about Lucy Greybeard's sanity. Where she'd gotten the makeup, he had no idea, for it was only just becoming accessible again in the capital. But her eyes were shadowed blue and lined with black, her cheeks were rouged, her lips were stained a somewhat greasy red. Here in the capital, that would have been bold. In District 12, it felt immoderate. She was impossible to look away from as she sat there running her hands over her skirt, compulsively smoothing the ruffles. Only when they were neatly arranged did she raise her hand to touch the mark on her cheek. Her lower lip trembled slightly, and her eyes shone with tears that threatened to spill over. Don't cry, Coriolanus whispered. He caught himself and looked around nervously to find that the other students were riveted. Their faces showed concern. She had won their sympathy despite her oddness. They had no idea who she was or why she attacked Mayfair, but who couldn't see that smirking thing was spiteful and her father was a brute who would flatten a girl that he'd just sentenced to death? I bet they rigged it, Sejanus said quietly. Her name wasn't on that slip. And just as the girl was about to lose her battle with the tears, a strange thing happened. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice began to sing, a young voice, which might belong to either a boy or a girl, but of such pitch it carried across the silent square. You can't take my past, you can't take my history. A puff of wind blew across the stage, and the girl slowly lifted her head. Somewhere else in the crowd, a deeper, distinct male voice sounded out. You could take my paw, but his name is a mystery. The shadow of a smile played on Lucy Gray Baird's lips. She suddenly pushed herself to her feet, strode to the center of the stage, grabbed the microphone, and let loose. Nothing you can take from me was ever worth the keeping. Her free hand dug into the ruffles of her skirt, swishing side to side, and all of it began to make sense. The costume, the makeup, her hair, whoever she was, she had dressed for a performance all along. She had a fine voice, bright, clear on the high notes, husky and rich on the low ones. It moved with assurance. You can't take my charm, you can't take my humor, you can't take my wealth, 'cause that is just a rumor. Nothing you can take from me was ever worth the keeping. Singing transformed her, and Coriolanus no longer felt her disconcerting. There was something exciting, even attractive about her. The cameras drank her in as she crossed to the front of the stage, leaned over the audience, sweet and insolent. Thinking you're so fine, thinking you can have mine, think you're in control, thinking you'll change me or maybe rearrange me, thinking again, 'cause if that's your goal. And then she was off, sashaying around the stage, right past the peacekeepers, some of whom were having trouble suppressing smiles, but none of them stopped to move her. You can take my sass, you can't take my talking, you can kiss my ass and then keep on walking. Nothing you can take from me was ever worth the keeping. The doors to the Justice Building banged open, and the peacekeepers who had taken the mayor off burst back onto the stage. There was a girl facing front, but you could see her register their arrival. She headed to the far end of the stage for her big finish. No, sir, nothing you can take from me is worth dirt. Take it 'cause I give it free, it won't hurt. Nothing you can take from me was ever worth the keeping. She managed to blow a kiss before they were on her. My friends call me Lucy Gray, and I hope you will too, she called out. One of the peacekeepers wrestled the mic from her hand, and another picked her up and carried her back to the middle of the stage. She waved as if to raucous applause, not dead silence. For a few moments, they were silent in Heavensby Hall as well. Coriolanus wondered if, like him, they were hoping that she would keep singing. And then everyone broke out talking, first about the girl and then about who had been lucky enough to get her. The other students were craning their heads around, some giving him a thumbs up, some shooting him resentful looks. He gave a bemused shake of his head, but inside he was glowing. Snowlands on top. Peacekeepers brought the mayor back out and planted themselves on either side of him to avoid further conflict. Lucy Gray ignored his return, having seemingly regained her poise by performing. The mayor glowered at the camera as he slapped his hand into the second bag and pulled out several slips. A few fluttered down to the stage, and he read the remaining paper. The District 12 boy is Jessup Diggs. The kids in the square stirred and made way for Jessup, a boy with a fringe of black hair plastered down on his prominent forehead. As District 12 tributes went, he was a fine specimen, bigger than average and strong-looking. His griminess suggested that he was already employed in the mines. A half-hearted attempt at washing had revealed a relatively clean oval in the middle of his face, but it was ringed with black and coal dust caked his nails. Awkwardly, he ascended the stairs to take his place. As he neared the mayor, Lucy Gray stepped forward and extended her hand. The boy hesitated, and then he reached out and shook it. Lucy Gray crossed in front of him and switched her right hand for her left as they were standing side by side, holding hands, when she made a deep curtsy, pulling the boy into a bow. A smattering of applause and a lone whoop came from the District 12 crowd before the peacekeepers closed in and the reaping broadcast cut to District 8. Coriolanus acted engrossed in the show as 8. 6 and 11 called their tributes, but his brain spun with the repercussions of landing on Lucy Gray Baird. She was a gift. He knew it. He must treat her as such. But how best to exploit her show-stopping entrance? How to wrangle some success from a dress, a snake, a song? And the tributes would be given precious little time with the audience before the games began. How could he get the audience to invest in her and, by extension, him, in just an interview? He half registered the other tributes, mostly pitiful creatures, and took note of Livia's District 1 boy that looked like he could be a contender as well. Coriolanus's girl seemed fairly healthy, but her slight build was more suited to dancing than to hand-to-hand combat. He bet she could run fast enough, though, and that was important. As the reaping drew to a close, the smell of food from the buffet wafted over the audience. Fresh baked bread, onions, meat. Coriolanus could not stop his stomach from growling, and he risked another couple swallows of Posca to quiet it. He felt wired, lightheaded, and ravenous. After the screen went dark, he had to use all the discipline that he could muster not to rush for the buffet. The endless dance with hunger had defined his life. Not the early years, not before the war, but every day since had been a battle, a negotiation, a game. How was it best to stave off hunger? Eat all the food at one meal, spread it out through a day in dribs and drabs, wolf it down, or chew every morsel to liquid? It was all just a mind game to distract himself from the fact that it was never enough. No one would ever let him have enough. No, this is not the newest book. This one came out in 2020. There's also one that came out just last month, but we'll read that next. During the war, the rebels had held the food-producing districts. Taking pages out of the capital's playbook, they tried to starve the capital into submission, using food, or lack thereof, as a weapon. Now the tables had turned again, with the capital controlling the supply and taking it one step further, twisting the knife into the district's hearts with the Hunger Games. Amid the violence of the games, there was a silent agony that everyone in Panem had experienced, the desperation for enough sustenance to bring you to the following sunrise. That desperation had turned upstanding capital citizens into monsters. Sorry, I was getting a dry throat. People who dropped dead from starvation in the streets became part of a gruesome food chain. On one winter's night, Coriolanus and Tigris had slipped out of the apartment to scavenge some wood crates they'd spotted earlier in an alley. On the way, they passed 3 bodies, recognized one as that of the young maid who'd served tea so nicely at the Crane's afternoon gathering. Crane. You recognize that last name? A heavy, wet snow began falling, and they thought that streets were deserted, but on the way home, a bundled figure sent them scurrying behind a hedge. They watched as their neighbor, Nero Price, a titan in the railroad industry, carved the leg from the maid, sawing back and forth with a terrifying knife until the limb came free. He wrapped it in the skirt that he'd ripped from her waist and then bolted down the side street that led to the back of his townhouse. The cousins never spoke of it, even to each other, but it was burned into Coriolanus's memory. The savagery disorienting Price's face, the white anklet and the scuffed black shoes at the end of the severed limb, the absolute horror of realizing that he too could now be viewed as edible. Coriolanus credited both his literal and moral survival to Grandmama's foresight early in the war. His parents were dead, Tigris was orphaned as well, and both children were living with their grandmother. The rebels had been making a slow but steady progression to the capital, although arrogance kept that reality from being widely acknowledged in the city. Food shortages required that even the richest seek out certain supplies on the black market. That was how Coriolanus found himself at the back door of a once trendy nightclub one late October afternoon, holding the handle of a small red wagon in one hand and Grandmama's gloved hand in the other. There was a bitter chill in the air that warned of an ominous winter and a blanket of gloomy gray clouds overhead. They had come to see Pluribus Bell, an aging man with lemon-tinted spectacles and a white powdered wig that fell to his waist. He and his partner Cyrus, a musician, owned the shuttered club and now made do by trafficking goods from its back alley. The Snows had come for a case of canned milk, the fresh stuff having disappeared weeks ago, but Pluribus said that he was sold out, and what had just arrived were crates of dried lima beans stacked high on the mirrored stage behind him. "Oh, they'll keep for years," Pluribus promised Grandmama. "I plan on setting aside 20 or so for personal use." Coriolanus's grandmother had laughed. "Oh, how ghastly!" "No, my dear, ghastly is what will happen without them," Pluribus had said. He didn't elaborate, but Grandmama stopped laughing. She shot a look at Coriolanus, and her hand clutched his for a second. It seemed involuntary, almost like a spasm, and then she looked at the crates and appeared to be figuring something in her head. "Oh, well, how many can you spare?" she asked the club owner. Coriolanus pulled one crate home on his wagon. The other 29 arrived in the dead of night, as hoarding was technically illegal. Cyrus had a friend that hauled the crates up the stairs and piled them in the middle of the lavishly furnished living room. On the top of the pile they placed a single can of milk, compliments of Pluribus, and then they bid them good night. Coriolanus and Tigris helped Grandmama hide them in the closets, in fancy wardrobes, and even inside an old clock. "Who's going to eat all these?" he asked. At the time, there was still bacon in his life, chicken, and occasionally a roast. Milk was spotty, but cheese was plentiful, and some sort of dessert could be counted on at dinner, even if it was just jam bread. "Oh, well, we'll eat some, and perhaps we can trade some," said Grandmama. "They'll be our secret." "I don't like lima beans," Coriolanus pouted. "Or at least, I don't think I like lima beans." "Well, we'll have to have the cook find a good recipe," said the Grandmama. But the cook had been called to serve in the war, and then died of the flu. The Grandmama, it turned out, did not even know how to turn on the stove, let alone follow a recipe. It fell to 8-year-old Tigris to boil the beans into a thick stew, and then a soup, and then watery broth, which was to sustain them throughout the war. Lima beans, cabbage, the ration of bread. They lived on it day in and day out for years. Surely it had impeded his growth. Surely he would have been taller, his shoulders broader, had he had more food. But his brain had developed properly, at least he hoped that it had. Beans, cabbage, brown bread. Coriolanus grew to hate the stuff, but it kept them alive, without shame and without cannibalizing the dead bodies in the street. Coriolanus swallowed the saliva flooding his mouth as he reached for the gilded edge plate embossed with the Academy's seal. And in the latest days, the capital had not lacked any fancy dishware. He had eaten many a cabbage leaf from fine china at home. He collected a linen napkin, a fork, a knife. As he raised the lid on the first sterling silver chafing dish, steam bathed his lips. Creamed onions. He took a modest spoonful and tried not to drool. Boiled potatoes, summer squash, baked ham, hot rolls with a pat of butter. On second thought, 2 pats of butter. A full plate, but not a greedy one, not for a teenage boy anyway. He set his plate on the table next to Clemencia and went to retrieve his dessert from the cart, because last year they had run out and he missed the tapioca entirely. His heart skipped a beat, and when he saw the rows of apple pie wedges, each decorated with a paper flag sporting the seal of Panem. Pie, he thought. When had he last tasted pie? He was reaching for a medium-sized piece when someone thrust a plate with an enormous slice under his nose. "Oh, to take a big one, boy. Growing boy like you can surely handle it." Dean Highbottom's eyes were rheumy, but they had lost the glaze of the morning. In fact, they were trained on Coriolanus with an unexpected sharpness. He took the plate of pie with a grin, and he hoped it was a boyishly good-natured one. Thank you, sir. I can always find room for pie." Yes, pleasures are never hard to accommodate," said the dean. "No one would know that better than I." No, I suppose not, sir." But that sounded wrong. He hadn't meant to agree with the part about pleasures, but it sounded like a snide remark about the dean's character. "You're not supposed to." Dean Highbottom's eyes narrowed at him as he continued to stare. "So what are your plans, Coriolanus, after the games?" Well, I hope to go to university," he replied. What a strange question. Surely his academic record made that obvious. Oh, yes, I saw your name among the prize contenders, said Dean Highbottom. But what if you shouldn't be awarded one? Coriolanus stammered. Oh, well, then I guess we'd pay the tuition, of course. Would you? Dean Highbottom laughed. Look at you, in your makeshift shirt and your too tight shoes, trying to hold it together. Strutting around the Capitol when I doubt the Snows have even a pot to piss in. Even with the prize, it would be a stretch, and you don't have that yet, do you? What then, I wonder, would happen to you? What then? Coriolanus could not help but glance around to see who else had heard the terrible words, but mostly people were engaged in mealtime chatter. Don't worry. Nobody knows. Well, hardly anyone. Enjoy that pie, boy. Dean Highbottom walked away without bothering to take a piece for himself. Coriolanus wanted nothing so much as to drop his pie and run for the exit, but instead he carefully set the oversized slice back on the cart. The nickname. It could only be the nickname that had found its way back to Dean Highbottom, with Coriolanus given credit for it. It had been stupid on his part. The dean was too powerful a person even now to be ridiculed in public. But was it really such a horrible thing? Every teacher had at least one nickname, many far less flattering than this, and it wasn't as if High as a Kite Bottom made much effort to hide his habits, seemed to invite derision. Could there be some other reason that he hated Coriolanus so much? Whatever it was, Coriolanus needed to set it right. He could not risk losing his prize over such a thing. After university, he planned to embark on some lucrative profession. With an education, what doors would be open to him? He tried to imagine his future in some low-level city position. What would he be doing? Managing the coal distribution in the districts, cleaning cages of genetic freaks in the mutation lab, collecting taxes from Sejanus Plinth in his palatial apartment on Corso, while he himself lived in some rat hole 50 blocks out? And that's if he were lucky. Capital jobs were hard to come by, and he would be penniless. An academy graduate no more. How was he to live? Borrow. Being in debt to the capital was historically a ticket to being a peacekeeper, and that came with a 20-year commitment to who knew where. They'd ship him off to some horrid backwater district where people were hardly better than animals. The day, which had held so much promise, came crashing down around him. First the threat of losing his apartment, then the lowliest tribute assignment, who on further reflection was definitely crazy, and now the revelation that Dean Highbottom detested him enough to kill his prize chances and condemn him to a life in the districts. Everyone knew what happened if you went to the districts. You were written off, forgotten. In the eyes of the capital, well, you were basically dead. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, 9:11. Let's see if we have time for another chapter. I don't know. These chapters are a little bit longer than the other books. Oh, but this one looks like, let's see, 37 to 48. I think we can do it. I think we can get this next chapter done. I think it's only 10 pages. Let's see. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Baby's still asleep, so we might as well keep going, am I right? Chapter 3. Coriolanus stood on the empty train platform awaiting his tribute's arrival. A long-stemmed white rose was balanced carefully between his thumb and index finger. It had been Tigress's idea to bring her a gift. She had arrived home very late on the night of the reaping, but he had waited up to consult with her, to tell her of his humiliations and his fears. She refused to let the conversation spin into despair. He would get a prize. He would have to. And a brilliant university career would follow. As to the apartment, they must find out the specifics first. Perhaps the tax would not affect them, or even if it did, maybe not soon. Maybe they could scrape up enough for the taxes somehow. But he was to think none of that, only of the Hunger Games and how he might make a success of it. As Fabricia's... Sorry. Okay, baby? Yeah? Maybe I should stand up before she gets mad. Should we stand up before you get mad? Yeah. Let's just stand up before we get mad, huh? Yeah. At Fabricia's reaping party, Tigress said everyone was nuts about Lucy Greybeard. His tribute had star quality. Her friends had declared as they drunkenly sipped their posca. The cousins agreed that he needed to make a good first impression on the girl so that she would be willing to work with him. He treated her not as a condemned prisoner, but as a guest. Coriolanus decided to greet her early at the train station. It would give him a jump on the assignment as well as an opportunity to win her trust. Well, imagine how terrified... Oops. There we go. Imagine how terrified she must be, Corio, Tigress had said. How alone she must feel. I mean, if it was me, anything that you could do to make me feel like you cared about me would go a long way. No, even more than that, like I was of value. Take her something, even a little token. Just let her know that you value her. Coriolanus thought about his grandmother's roses, which were prized in the capital. The old woman nurtured them arduously in the roof garden that came with the penthouse, both out of doors and in a small solar greenhouse. She parceled out her flowers like diamonds, though, so it had taken a good bit of persuasion to get this beauty. I need to make a connection with her, and as you always say, roses open any doors. It was a testament to how worried his grandmother was about their situation that she even allowed it. 2 days had passed since the reaping. The city had held on to the impressive heat, even though it was just past dawn. The train station was beginning to bake. Coriolanus felt conspicuous on the wide, deserted platform, but he couldn't risk missing her train. The only information that he could get out of his downstairs neighbor, the game maker in training, Remus Doolittle, was that it was supposed to arrive on Wednesday. Remus had graduated recently from the university, and his family had pulled out every favor to get him this position, which was just paid enough to provide a stepping stone to future. Coriolanus could have inquired through the academy, but he didn't know if greeting the train would be frowned upon. No rules had been laid out per se, but he thought most of his classmates would wait to meet their tributes at the sessions overseen by the academy the following day. An hour passed, and then 2, and still no train of any kind appeared. The sun beat down through the glass panes of the station, perspiration trickled down his back, and the rose, so majestic that morning, had begun to bend in resignation. He wondered if the whole idea was ill-conceived, if he would get no thanks for greeting her in this way. Another girl, a typical girl, would be impressed, but there was nothing typical about Lucy Greybeard. In fact, there was something intimidating about a girl who could pull off such a brazen performance on the heels of a mayor's assault, and that just after she had dropped a venomous snake down another girl's dress. As, of course, he didn't know that it was venomous, but that was where the mind went, wasn't it? She was terrifying, really, and here he was in his uniform, clutching a rose like some love-struck schoolboy, hoping that she would, what, like him? Trust him? Not kill him on sight? Her cooperation was imperative. Yesterday, Satria had led a mentors meeting in which their first assignment had been detailed. In the past, the tributes had gone directly to the arena the morning after they arrived in the capital, but the timeline had been extended now that the academy students were involved. It had been decided that each mentor was to interview the tribute, and they would be given 5 minutes to present them to Panem on a live television program. If people had someone to root for, they might actually have interest in watching the Hunger Games, and if it all went well, it would be primetime viewing. The mentors might even be invited to comment on their tributes during the games. Coriolanus promised himself that his 5 minutes would be the standout of the night. Another hour crawled by, just as he was ready to give up, when a train whistled into the tunnel. Those first few months of the war, the whistle signaled his father's arrival from the battlefield. His father had felt that as munitions tycoon, military service enhanced his legitimacy in the family business. With an excellent head for strategy, nerves of steel, and a commanding presence, he'd quickly climbed the ranks. To publicly display their commitment to the capital's cause, the Snow family would travel to the station, Coriolanus in his velvet suit to await the great man's return, until the day the train brought only the news that a rebel bullet had found its mark. It was hard in the capital to find a spot that wasn't linked to a terrible memory, but this was a particularly bad one. He could not say that he felt great love for the remote district man, but he certainly had felt protected by him. His death was associated with a fear, a vulnerability that Coriolanus had never been able to shake off. The whistle blew as the train sped into the station and screeched to a halt. It was a short train, only an engine and 2 cars. Coriolanus looked for a glimpse of his tribute in the windows before he realized that the cars had none. They were designed not for passengers, but for cargo. Heavy metal chains attached old-fashioned padlocks that secured the goods. Wrong train, he thought. Might as well go home. But then a distinctly human cry came from one of the cargo cars, and he remained in place. He expected a rush of peacekeepers, but the train sat ignored for 20 minutes before a few made their way to the rails. One of them exchanged words with an unseen engineer, and a set of keys was tossed out the window. The peacekeeper took his time meandering to the first car, flipping the keys before he selected one, stuck it in the padlock, and gave it a twist. The lock and chains fell away. He rolled back the heavy door. The car appeared. The peacekeepers pulled out his baton and banged it against the doorframe. "All right, you lot, let's move." A tall boy with dark brown skin and a patched burlap clothing appeared in the doorway. Coriolanus recognized him as Clemencia's tribute from District 11, rangy but muscular. A girl with similar coloring but a skeletal frame and a hacking cough joined him. Both of them were barefoot with their hands cuffed in front of their bodies. It was a 5-foot drop to the ground, so they sat on the edge of the car before launching themselves awkwardly onto the platform. A small, pasty-faced girl in a striped dress and a red scarf crawled to the door, but seemed unable to figure out how to cover the distance to the ground. The peacekeeper yanked her down and she landed hard, barely catching herself with her bound hands. And then he reached into the car and dragged out a boy who looked to be about 10 years old, but had to be at least 12, and he hauled him onto the platform as well. By now, the smell of the car, musty and heavy with manure, had reached Coriolanus. They were transporting tributes in livestock cars, and not very clean ones at that. He wondered if they had been fed and let out for fresh air, or if they had just been locked in after their reapings. Accustomed as he was to viewing the tributes on screen, he had not prepared himself properly for this encounter in the flesh, and a wave of pity and revulsion swept through him. They really were creatures of another world, a hopeless, brutish world. The peacekeeper moved on to the second car and released the chains. The door slid open, revealing Jessup, the District 12 male tribute, squinting into the brightly lit station. Coriolanus felt a jolt run through him. His body straightened in anticipation. Surely she would be with him. Jessup hopped stiffly to the ground and turned back to the train. Lucy Greybeard stepped into the light, her cuffed hands half covering her eyes as they adjusted. Jessup reached his arms up, his wrists spread as wide as the chain's restraints would allow, and she fell forward, letting him catch her by the waist, swung her to the ground in a surprisingly graceful move. She patted the boy's sleeve to thank him and tilted her head back to drink in the sunlight streaming into the station. Her fingers began to comb through her curls, untangling the knots and picking out bits of straw. Coriolanus's attention turned for a moment to the peacekeepers who were hollering threats into the train. When he gazed back, Lucy Gray was staring directly at him. He stared a bit, but then he remembered that he was the only one on the platform besides the peacekeepers. The soldiers were cursing now as they hoisted one of their numbers into the train car to retrieve the reluctant tributes. It was now or never. He crossed to Lucy Gray, extended the rose, and gave a small nod. "Welcome to the capital," he said. His voice was slightly gravelly, as he had not spoken for hours, but he thought that it gave him a nice maturity. The girl sized him up, and for a minute he feared that she was going to either walk away or, worse, laugh at him. Instead, she reached out and delicately plucked a petal from the flower in his hand. "When I was little, they used to bathe me in buttermilk and rose petals," she said in that manner, despite the unlikeliness of her claim seemed totally believable. She ran her thumb over the glossy white surface and slipped the petal into her mouth, closing her eyes to savor the taste. "Well, this tastes like bedtime." Coriolanus took the moment to examine her. She looked different than she had at the reaping, except for the flecks here and there. The makeup had been wiped away, and without it she appeared younger. Her lips were chapped, her hair was loose, her rainbow dress was dusty and ruffled. The marks from the mare's blow had turned into a deep purple bruise on her face, but there was something else too. He had the impression that he was witnessing a performance, but it was a private one this time. When she opened her eyes, she trained all her attention on him. "You don't look like you should be here." Well, I probably shouldn't," he admitted, "but I'm your mentor, and I wanted to meet you on my own terms, not on the game maker's terms." "Oh, a rebel," she said. That word was poison in the mouths of capital citizens, but she had said it approvingly, as it was a compliment. Or was she mocking him? He remembered that she carried snakes in her pockets, and the usual rules didn't apply to her. "And what does my mentor do for me, besides bringing me roses?" "Well, I'll do my best to take care of you," he said, and she glanced over her shoulder where the peacekeepers were tossing 2 half-starved children onto the platform. The girl broke a front tooth on the platform, and the boy received several sharp kicks upon landing. Lucy Gray smiled up at Coriolanus. "Well, good luck, gorgeous," she said, and walked back to Jessup, leaving him and his rose behind. As the peacekeepers herded the tributes across the station to the main entrance, Coriolanus felt his chance slipping away. He had not secured her trust. He'd not done anything except, well, perhaps amuse her for a moment. Clearly, she thought that he was useless, and maybe she was right. But with all that was at stake, he had to try. He ran across the station, catching up to the pack of tributes as they reached the door. Excuse me," he said to the peacekeeper in charge. "I'm Coriolanus Snow from the Academy," and he inclined his head towards Lucy Gray. "This tribute has been assigned to me for the Hunger Games. I wonder if I might accompany her to her quarters." "What?"
She won't let you sit.
"What?"
She won't let you sit.
"No, but she's asleep. We just can't sleep sitting. We can sleep standing, just not sitting."
Sure.
Yeah, you know. "That's why you've been hanging around here all morning, to catch a ride to the show?" asked the peacekeeper. He reeked of liquor, and his eyes were rimmed red. "Well, by all means, Mr. Snow, join the party." It was then that Coriolanus saw the truck that awaited the tributes. Well, it was less of a truck than a cage on wheels. The bed was enclosed by metal bars and topped with a steel roof. He again flashed back to the circus of his childhood, where he had seen the wild animals, big cats and bears, confined to such a transport. Following orders, the tributes presented their cuffs for removal and climbed into the cage. Coriolanus hung back, but then he saw Lucy Gray watching him and knew that this was a moment of judgment. If he backed down now, it would all be over. She would think that he was a coward and dismiss him entirely. He took a deep breath and hoisted himself up into the cage. The door slammed shut behind him, and the truck lurched forward, knocking him off balance. He reflexively grabbed the bars on his right and wound up with his forehead crammed between them as a couple of tributes fell into him. He pushed back forcefully and twisted his body around to face his fellow passengers. Everyone had hold of at least one bar now, except for the girl with the broken tooth who was clinging to the leg of the boy from her district, and as the truck rumbled down the wide avenue, they began to settle in. Coriolanus knew that he had made a mistake. Even in the open air, the stench was overwhelming. The tributes had absorbed the odor of the cattle car, and it mixed with the unwashed human smell that made him feel slightly nauseous. Up close, he could see how grubby they really were, how bloodshot their eyes were, how bruised their limbs were. Lucy Gray had crammed into a corner at the front, dabbing the fresh scrape on her forehead with her ruffled hem. She seemed indifferent to his presence, but the rest of them stared at him like a pack of feral animals eyeing a pampered poodle. "Well, at least I'm in better condition." You're gonna kick out of this? Is that what you're gonna do now? You wanna hang out with Daddy for a minute? You wanna say hello to Dada?
Yeah.
She's awake now.
Hello.
I wanna turn off her sleep because my phone is on the live. You wanna hang out with Dada for a minute? Mommy's almost done. Woo! Woo! Yeah, you wanna hang out with Dada? Here you go. I'm gonna take the clock.
I do. Smiley girl.
Yeah, happy girl.
Okay. Of course not.
Oh, okay.
You love Mom and perhaps Dad.
Oh,
Hidden under the pants.
she loves Dada.
Oh, on her shirt.
Oh.
Really good shirt. Her You know, we old man her pants, so it's covering up the desk.
It's true, I did old man her pants. You're right about that.
Not as much as yesterday, but still.
No, not as much as yesterday. Let's see. At least I'm in better condition than they are, he thought, and he made a fist around the stem of the rose. If they attack, I'll stand a chance. But would he? Against so many? The truck slowed to let one of the colorful street trolleys packed with people cross in front of it. Although he was in the back, Coriolanus hunched down to avoid being noticed. The trolley passed, the truck began to roll, and he dared to straighten up. They were laughing at him, the tributes, or at least some of them were grinning at his obvious discomfort. "What's the matter, pretty boy? You in the wrong cage?" said the boy from District 11, who was not laughing at all. The undisguised hatred rattled Coriolanus, but he tried to look unimpressed. Nope, this is indeed the cage I was looking for." The boy's hand came up fast, encircling Coriolanus' throat with his long, scarred fingers, slamming him back. His forearms were pinned. Coriolanus' body was against the bars. Overpowered, Coriolanus resorted to the one move that had yet to fail him in schoolyard scuffles. He drove his knee up hard into his opponent's crotch. The district boy gasped and doubled over, releasing him. "He might kill you now," the girl from District 11 coughed in Coriolanus' face. "He killed a peacekeeper back in 11. They never figured out who did it." "Shut it, Dill," the boy growled. "Who cares now?" said Dill. "Let's us kill 'em all," said a tiny boy with a vicious voice. "Can't do nothing worse to us than they're already." Several other tributes murmured in agreement and took a step in. Coriolanus went rigid with fear. Kill him? Did they really mean to beat him to death right here in broad daylight in the middle of the capital? Suddenly, he knew that they did. What, after all, did they have to lose? His heart pounded in his chest, and he crouched slightly, fists extended in anticipation of the imminent attack. From the corner, though, Lucy Gray's melodic voice broke the tension. "Not to us, maybe, but you sure got family back home. Someone there they could punish?" This seemed to take the wind out of the other tribute's sails. She wriggled through and placed herself between them and Coriolanus. "Besides," she said, "he's my mentor. He's supposed to help me. I might need him." "How come you get a mentor?" said Dill. How come you get a mender?" asked Dill. "Mentor. You each get one," explained Coriolanus, trying to sound on top of the situation. "Where are they, then?" Dill challenged. "Why didn't they come?" "Well, just not inspired enough, I guess," said Lucy Gray, turning from Dill as she gave Coriolanus a wink. The truck veered onto a narrow street and bumped down to what appeared to be a dead end. Coriolanus could not quite get his bearings. He tried to remember where the tributes had been held in previous years. Had it been the stables that housed the peacekeeper horses? Yes, he did think he heard some mention of that. And as soon as they arrived, he would find a peacekeeper and explain things, and perhaps ask for a bit of protection given the hostility. After Lucy Gray's wink, it might be worth it to stay a while. They were backing in now to a dimly lit building, maybe a warehouse. Coriolanus inhaled a musky mix of rotten fish and old hay. Confused, he tried to get a better fix on his surroundings, and his eyes strained to make out the two metal doors swinging open. A peacekeeper opened the back door to the truck, and before anyone could climb out, the cage tipped and dumped them onto a slab of cold, damp cement. Not a slab, actually, it was more like a chute, for tilted at such an extreme angle that Coriolanus began to slide immediately all along with the rest. He dropped the rose at his hands, and his feet scrambled for purchase but found none. They all traveled a good 20 feet before they landed in a jumbled heap on the gritty floor. Sunlight glared down on Coriolanus as he scrambled to untangle his body from the pack. He staggered out a few yards, righted himself, and froze in horror. This was not the stables. While he had not visited in many years, he now remembered it clearly. The stretch of sand, the artificial rock formations twisting high in the air, the row of metal bars engraved to look like vines curled into a wide arc to protect the audience. Between the sets of bars, the faces of capital children gawked at him. He was in the monkey house at the zoo. Well then. Perfect timing indeed. Well, this is already better than I remember, as with all of her books. So thrilled that we're doing this. I'm gonna try to get on live tonight. I need to make a Pretty Putty and a Rotating Good Hurt. So those both need to be made tonight. I'm hoping that I will get to make those with you all live. More orders are gonna go out today. I also need to make more Snow White and I need to make more Belle. However, I am waiting for more yellow clay to come in the mail from Dope Slimes, which is where I get that clay. So if you are waiting for your slime of the month, which is Belle, to come in the mail, I haven't forgotten you. I'm just waiting for more yellow clay. The more victory pellets are arriving today. We had more signups for Belle than I had expected. And then I'm gonna make another run of Snow White and another run of Pain and Panic, because those we didn't have enough supplies for, so I'm getting more of the beads to make Pain. So if you're waiting on those, again, you haven't been forgotten. Yes, it was a pretty great one. Belle is so nice. I might try to make extras so people who have already used theirs up can get more if they want, as like, especially because I'm trying to get ahead for June stuff. So if someone like wants to trade their grab, like for example, Jen gets a grab bag every month. If she loves Belle so much, I'm not saying this is Jen's decision, but like if Jen is like, I killed my Belle and I want, Jamie, I might actually give you a label and pay for you to send them on to someone else, but hold on one second. Let me just make sure. I think actually, Jamie, you don't have to. I think those might be your grab bags because those I have plenty of, Jamie, so I might actually make that your next grab bag since you already have them, and it would be a boon for you to get more than you would normally anyway. Yeah, so if someone like Jen, who gets a grab bag every month, says, I killed my Belle slime and I want more, since I'll have more, she can get that for her next month's grab bag, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna try to make more of it as long as I can get that yellow clay. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to get clay now that the tariffs are in place. So I begged my friend Mark, who owns Dope Slimes, I was like, please, can I have any yellow clay you have in stock? And he said he has some, but it is old, is what he said. So he's giving it to me to test, and he's only gonna charge me if any of them are good. He didn't want to touch it. He didn't want to like open it, you know what I mean? But he said he has some in a warehouse, and so they could either be dried out or melted. If it's melted, great, I can fix it. I know how to fix melted. If it's dried out, I'm SOL, you know? So we're just gonna do what we're gonna do, you guys. We're gonna keep trying here. And it's not a brand, it's just plasticine clay, but it's not cheap, unfortunately. It used to be easy to get, but now it's getting very difficult to get. So it is what it is, but we're gonna make it either way, you know, I'll figure out a way. If I can't get that in yellow, we'll just take the white clay that I have from that brand and we'll dye it. It will be a slightly different texture if I have to dye it. If it's dried, can you have white glue? I've tried that before. It doesn't really work that well. It used to work, but I don't know if they changed something in the recipe or whatever, but now it just kind of breaks into pieces, which is not great, because then you just have clumpy slime and nobody really wants that. So I think worst case scenario, if the yellow doesn't pan out, I'll use the white clay I have and we'll dye it. It'll be a slightly different shade of yellow. It'll be a slightly different texture because of the paint, but not really enough to speak of. So we have alternatives, you know what I mean? I'm trying the yellow clay situation first, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, hopefully I'll see you guys on live tonight, and we'll make Pretty Putty and a Rotating Good Hurt. Don't let me forget to do those things. If you see me on live and I'm not making one of those things, to me, you know what I'm saying? That's what you have to do. You have to go, Sasha, like that. Okay. So anyway, they sound like they're having a great time in there. I don't know if you can hear her laughing her little head off. She's having a great time with Dad. Hurdy and Putty, got it. Amanda is in charge. Amanda's like HR 2.0. I am hoping to get the calendar for the June slimes and the June classes and all that posted to this week. So keep an eye out for that. I'm also hoping to have all the orders shipped this week. So I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.